Okay, let's talk about the Book of Revelation. It's got to be one of the wildest, most confusing books ever written, right? But what if I told you there's a kind of user's guide to help make sense of all the strange visions and symbols? Well, drawing on the incredible work of scholar Dr. Dave Mathewson, we're going to explore a framework that might just change how you see the whole thing.
I mean, you open it up and right away you're hit with stuff like this. A dragon with 7 heads. A woman wearing the sun as a coat. Stars just falling out of the sky. For most of us, reading this feels, well, it feels totally bizarre, like trying to understand a language from another planet.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? What are we supposed to do with this? Are we meant to be on the lookout for literal multi-headed monsters? Is it some secret code about the future that's impossible to crack? Or is there another way to look at it? That confusion, that's exactly where we need to start.
So here's the heart of the problem. It's not that we're not smart enough to get it. Not at all. It's that we're often showing up with the wrong toolbox. We try to read this ancient, symbolic, visionary book with our modern, literal mindset, and no surprise, it just creates a ton of confusion.
And that's the key right there. The whole thing clicks into place when you realize the confusion comes from a basic misunderstanding of what Revelation is. See, before we can figure out what it means, we have to know what kind of writing we're even looking at.
Dr. Mathewson calls this the genre decoder ring, because Revelation isn't just one thing. It's actually a mashup of 3 different kinds of literature all woven together, and once you can spot those 3 threads, the whole book starts to look a lot less tangled.
Okay, so here are the 3 genres. First, it's an apocalypse, which is a Greek word that just means an unveiling. It uses these wild, symbolic visions to pull back the curtain and show what's really going on in the world. Second, it's prophecy, which isn't just about predicting the future. It's about speaking God's truth to people in their specific situation. And third, it's a letter, a real, actual letter written to 7 real churches in the first century. And this is so important because, well, genre tells you the rules of the game. You know this instinctively, right? You would never read a poem by, say, Maya Angelou the same way you'd read a breaking news report. You just wouldn't. Well, the same principle applies here. We have to read Revelation by its own rules.
All right, so if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. This is the absolute master key. This is the one shift in your thinking that changes everything.
So, a lot of us were taught the approach on the left. Take everything as literally as you can, unless it's just completely impossible. But Mathewson says we need to do the exact opposite. Start with the assumption that what you're reading is symbolic, and only take it literally if the text pretty much forces you to.
And he's not messing around. He says we need to turn that whole principle on its head. It's a complete 180-degree flip. We have to change our default setting from literal to symbolic.
You know, the best way to think about this is like a political cartoon. When you see a cartoon of a donkey arguing with an elephant, you don't think, wow, there must literally be animals running the government. Of course not. You instantly know they represent political parties. Well, it's the same idea. The first century audience didn't hear about a 7-headed beast and start looking for a monster. They knew it was a powerful symbol for something real in their world, the Roman Empire.
Here's another way to put it. Revelation isn't a CNN news flash giving you a dry play-by-play of events. It's much more like walking through an art gallery. The art is about real things, real people, real empires, real events, but it's using powerful, sometimes shocking imagery to show you the deeper truth behind them.
Okay, so think symbolically as our foundation. Now let's add 3 more practical tools to our reader's toolkit. These will help keep us on the right track as we read.
This one's a biggie. It's a critical boundary. Basically, if your interpretation of a symbol depends on knowing about, say, 21st century military helicopters or the internet, it's almost definitely wrong. Why? Because the message had to make sense to its original audience, first century Christians living in the Roman Empire.
So, putting it all together. First, always ask yourself, what could this have meant to them in their world? Second, remember why the book was written in the first place. It's not just a secret timeline. It's meant to encourage people who are suffering and to warn people who are compromising their beliefs. And finally, approach it with humility. Nobody has this book completely figured out, and that's okay.
You know, this symbolic way of thinking even applies to the numbers. They aren't there for math homework. They're packed with meaning. The number 7 doesn't just mean 7. It symbolizes completeness or perfection. 12 isn't just a dozen. It represents the people of God. The whole book is communicating on this deeper, symbolic level.
So, let's bring it all home. If Revelation isn't this super secret roadmap to our future, filled with coded predictions about current events, then what is it? What's its real purpose? Well, here it is. This is the point of all the dragons and angels and cosmic battles. It's all designed to ask the reader one soul-searching question. Who are you really loyal to? It's a powerful call to be faithful, to stand firm in a world that's constantly demanding you compromise, and to give you the courage to do that no matter what it costs.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Once we stop trying to use Revelation to predict the future, it stops being a locked book. It becomes this incredible, timeless work of art. Its symbols can still speak powerfully to us today about our own struggles with power, with compromise, and with the challenge of holding on to hope. So, when you look at it that way, what do you see?